Hi, I'm Rich Harwood. Welcome to another special edition of Harwood Half Hour called Turning Outward Together. I'm a minute late today because just as I went live, Facebook Live, and you can see the flickering here, Facebook Live crashed, and I had to get it back up running again and try to get this moving. So shoot me a message and let me know that you can hear me and that this is in fact live and that it's working. And welcome to our special edition of Turning Outward Together. Um, these editions are to help you stay grounded during this crazy, challenging time of this pandemic. Previous episodes are on our Facebook page. You can go to the banner there at the top of the page, click it on. You'll see a link, and you can go to a playlist that will bring you to all of our previous episodes. As I mentioned, if you can hear me, there you go. I can start to see people right in now. Sorry about the technical difficulties. As I mentioned a moment ago, if you're just joining me, just when I went live before the system crashed, I had a hard time getting it going again. You can probably see it flickering now, and hopefully you can hear me and see me, and and we can get started today. You know, today as the pandemic persists and it continues with no real end in sight for many of us across the country, we can feel like we're just mired and slogging through. We can feel this incredible sense of uncertainty. We can feel this incredible sense of self-doubt. And we can wonder how best to show up for ourselves and for one another in these challenging, crazy times. And so today's topic is from where I am to here I am. From where I am to here I am. And again, shoot me a message to make sure that I know you can hear me. Here's a question I'd like you to think about in the next 20 minutes or so as we're going through this together. And it's this, given the slog that we're all going through, what are you wrestling with in terms of uncertainty, in terms of self-doubt, and in terms of how you show up for yourself and for others? Again, if you're just joining us, I'm Rich Harwood. Welcome to a special edition of Turning Outward Together. Our topic today is from where I am to here I am. And in the last few days, I've, as always, been talking to many of you across the country about the challenges that you're facing and what you're wrestling with. And I just wanted to talk about a few things that I've heard. I talked to one foundation CEO who, when I talked to her, said that she's wrestling simply with the enormity of the challenges, of the community challenges that she and her community are facing, and the self-doubt that riddles her about what she has to offer her community, and the sense of privilege, the sense of where she sits with a sense of privilege now, and how that might influence or shape the choices and decisions that she makes moving forward. I talked to a founder and a guide of a national faith network who told me that all the folks in his faith network are struggling with how do they plan for a future that just doesn't seem to exist, that we can't get our arms around, that we can't define in any real way. And these are all relatively young, new faith leaders, and with limited experience, most of them. And they're just filled with self-doubt about what to do and a profound sense of fear that amid these challenging times, they're going to lose their congregations and lose their funding. I spoke the other day, actually last night, I think I can say this, give a shout out to Tracy Hall, the new executive director of the American Library Association, who I've known for years and adore. Tracy and I were talking last night about the stress and challenges that public libraries and libraries of all kinds, school libraries and academic libraries, are under across the country today. And I've been talking to many staff within libraries and the challenges that they're facing. And they're wondering, just at a time when they're needed most, when they give rise to the voices in their communities, when they have this constellation of services that are so important to bridge divides and inequities in our society, just at the time when they're needed most, they're under stress because they're losing funding. Their funding sources are drying up in many states and communities, and they're facing layoffs. And so they face uncertainties and self-doubt about what to do and how to engage. You know, and I know that there are no simple or easy answers to these dilemmas. There's no magic wand that we can wave. There's no switch that we can flip and somehow do away with the uncertainty and self-doubt and questions about how we should show up for one another. When I deal with communities that have gone through trauma, what I have found is that those communities and the people in them move through the trauma in their own ways, at their own pace, on their own timetables. No one can ever truly predict when people will move through and how they'll move through exactly. But what we do know, while there is no formula, there is a path that people seem to take over time. And so it seems in this time right now, the challenges that we face, these crazy times that we're in, that we're kind of on a journey of our own. We don't know exactly how it will unfold. We don't know the paces that we'll undergo and the timetable. But I think we can start to think about how we move from where we are today to here I am. And that's what I want to talk about. 3 steps that you can take to move from where you are to here I am. And as I go through this, what I'd urge you to do is to think about, whether it's now or when you're listening to this later, to pull out a piece of paper and to jot down the answers to the 3 points or questions that I'm going to mention today. You ready? 3 steps. The first one is this. Acknowledge that you're experiencing a whole bunch of oh shit moments. Now, if I were on television, I probably couldn't say that. Or if I were on certain programs, I wouldn't say that. But on this Facebook Live, I will say it. All of us, each of us, are facing what we all know as oh shit moments, where this uncertainty, this sense of tension that we're facing is kind of on steroids. We're stuck at home for many of us. We're worried. You're worried about your projects. You're worried about your teams. You're worried about the health of your organizations. We're worried about when this pandemic will end and we can all move back into our lives in a better, more productive way. We're wondering about how to deal with what we're facing and what we're confronting. And will you have the necessary resources and even staff to do that? These challenges, these moments where we just sort of say, oh, damn, we're faced with this situation that just seems untenable, undoable, beyond our ability to act on. What I know is that it becomes incredibly important when you're dealing with moments like this to simply acknowledge that they exist, to take a deep breath. Like the faith leaders who are worried about losing their congregations, or that foundation CEO who's worried about facing the enormity of the situation in her local community, or the times at which you might say in your own work or in your own life, God, I'm just screwed now. What am I going to do? How am I going to handle this moment? You know, and I know that the more that we try to avoid thinking about these situations, the more they haunt us. The more we try to hide from them, the more they come out when we least expect them. The more we try to push them down, the more they wake us up at night. And so here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down the 1 or 2 oh shit moments that you think you're facing the most. Write it down, get it down. You have to face it. And when you face up to these moments, you can begin to deal with the fears that are holding you back from stepping forward. So in terms of dealing with the uncertainty, in terms of dealing with the self-doubt, in terms of dealing with how we show up for ourselves and for one another, the first thing I think we need to do is to acknowledge that we're facing a whole bunch of oh shit moments that are causing this uncertainty and causing this self-doubt and causing us oftentimes not to show up for one another and not to show up for ourselves. So first thing is write it down. So if that's the first point, acknowledge these moments. The second point is that to deal with our self-doubt, we need to remember where we've been. We need to remember where we've been. Many of you are asking, can I handle this situation? Can I deal with it? Can I make something positive and productive out of it? And as you know, there's something that happens when we're under stress, when we're under strain, when we feel down or depressed. We can literally forget what we know. We can forget to try to remember what we know. Now, none of us have faced a pandemic, but all of us have experiences to draw on that can help us figure out how to move forward from where we are. I just talked to someone yesterday who was telling me when we were talking about these challenges and lamenting how difficult they can be to face, all of a sudden she said, you know, Rich, I've been here before, not exactly, but in other ways. I've lived through Katrina. I've lived through the Great Recession of 2008. I've lived through Hurricane Sandy. I've lived through all sorts of other things. I have all these experiences that I can draw on. I have experiences from my childhood that I can draw on as well. We all have experiences that we can draw on. And the funny thing is about our memory often serves to fill us with self-doubt. Those are the things that often come into our minds first. What comes into our minds first about the past often is the tapes in our own mind about how we can't do something, about why we're not capable enough, about why someone else might be better equipped, about why we won't be able to overcome the challenge that we faced, about the different bad experiences that we've had in our lives and in our professional lives, about people telling us, maybe a teacher, a coach, or a friend, or a parent telling us that we can't do something. But here's the thing about our memory is that it can just as easy teach us about what we are capable of, about the challenges we have overcome in the past, about the ways in which we have stepped forward before, about the ways in which we can move forward together. And so when you think about those oh shit moments, I also want you to think about all the times in your memory when you've overcome self-doubt, when you have stepped forward, when you have made a difference amid great challenge and crazy times. And I want you to write those things down, to remind yourself of the times that you have overcome self-doubt, of the times when you have achieved something amid great challenge. Write it down, put it on a sticky note, send it as a reminder through your smartphone. Because when you remember where you've been, you can begin to step forward in a new way to take on the challenges before you that are ahead of you. So if the first thing is to acknowledge that we're experiencing oh shit moments, and the second point is that in order to deal with self-doubt, we must remember where we've been. The third point is this: step forward and declare, here I am. Step forward and declare, here I am. You know, one of my favorite stories in the Bible, and the story that I open up my book, Stepping Forward, with, is about when God called out to Moses at the burning bush. And I tell this not to proselytize or talk about my faith, but because I think it's actually a really instructive parable for all of us to think about. When God called out to Moses, Moses essentially said, "Who, me?" And then he answered, "Here I am." And then when God sort of instructed Moses to go tell the Pharaoh to free the Israelites from slavery, Moses said again, "Who, me? Who am I to do that?" Now, none of us are being called forward like Moses was, and none of us have faced a pandemic before either. But All of us have faced tough situations before, and we know what they are. And to move forward, whether it was in the case of Moses or other people, or most importantly, in our own case, to move forward and to say, here I am, requires that we step forward. It requires that we make ourselves visible. It requires that we are present to one another. It requires that we are here, we are awake, we're ready to go. And here's the thing. When you step forward to say, here I am, this is the most important thing. You don't need to know all the answers. You don't need to rid yourself of all your self-doubt. You don't need to remove or erase or address all the oh shit moments you're facing all at once, as if somehow you can make them magically disappear. You don't need to go it alone on your own by yourself. You can go with others. Instead, what I want you to think about is how you can show up for yourself and for others, and to get clear about what it feels like to step forward when you've stepped forward in the past to say, here I am visible, I am present, I am awake, I am here. Not to remember the times that you've conquered everything, but simply to remember the times when you've stepped forward and made yourself present, when you made yourself visible, when you've said, I'm awake, when I'm here. That's all you need to do. And when you do that, to begin to think about the small steps that you can begin to take to move forward. So in this case, I want you to write down what it feels like to say, here I am, what it has felt like in the past for you to say, here I am. And I want you to write down as well, when you say, here I am, what are the steps, the small steps you can begin to take to make yourself more present, more visible, more awake, more here. And here's the thing. The more you step forward and are in motion, meaning the more small steps you begin to take, the more things you will discover along the way, the more possibilities for taking action and joining with others you will find along the way, and the greater sense of personal and collective agency you will develop in yourself and in others as well. So 3 steps. Remember that and acknowledge that there are these oh shit moments, and we have to face up to them and know them in order to move from where I am to here I am. We have to deal with self-doubt. We have to remember where we've been. And in order to move forward, we have to declare, here I am, and begin to start to take small steps forward to develop a sense of possibility and hope. So just remember, as I said at the beginning, this is a journey. There's no magic wand to wave. There's no switch to flip. There's no easy answer here. It's just one step after another, taking one step at a time. You need to step forward, and you need to go on this journey, and you need to work it, and you need to make it your own. And you need to take these 3 steps I've outlined today in order to move from where you are to here I am. And so my hope for you today is this. As always, to take good care of yourself, to stay in good health, in good spirits. And in doing so, don't turn away from others, but turn toward one another. And my hope when you do this is that you will step forward and go on this journey to find and go from where you are to here I am. So some of your thoughts, go to our Facebook page to listen to previous episodes. Share this episode with others if you believe it can be helpful to them or will resonate with them. And also, just a quick plug for my book, Stepping Forward. You can go to Amazon and order a copy of that, where a lot of the thoughts I've mentioned today are in that book as well. So until next week, Wednesday at 4 p.m., another edition of Turning Outward Together. Be well, stay in good health and good spirits. and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks so much for joining me.